are fewer and fewer technical constraints on what we can do. That places a special obligation on us to ask tough questions about what we should do.
President Obama trying to strike the right balance between security and privacy in the wake of the Edward Snowden leaks. And it's time now for our Sunday group. Brit Hume, Fox News senior political analyst. We welcome Robert Costa of The Washington Post. Kimberly Strassel from The Wall Street Journal and Fox News political analyst Juan Williams. Well, Brit, the president, I think it's fair to say, was trying to find some middle ground between the intelligence community on the one hand and the civil liberties folks on the other. Which side should be happier with what he ended up deciding?
I think the intelligence folks should be happy. He trimmed the program at its edges, as you heard General Hayden describe. He did not dismantle it, nor did he really propose to dismantle it. Now, he does have this central idea of moving all this metadata stored by the NSA to some other site. It's not clear he can pull that off because nobody really knows where to put it. The phone companies don't want it. But by and large, the program remains intact, and I think the president did. This shows the president believes in the program. And I think what he did was as little as he thought he could get away with politically. He felt he had to do something because the objections to this, paranoid, some of them in my view, were pretty loud, and a lot of people sort of on left and right were expressing them.
Let's make the point there. The president continues metadata collection. He continues the national security letters. He continues the government's ability to try to penetrate private companies, their software and their hardware, their encryption, to get information. Bob, I want to ask you the same question that I asked our two guests in the prior segment. Doesn't the president, in effect, maintain the basic surveillance structure that was created after 9/11 by George W. Bush?
He does. There really was a status quo speech in many ways, but I think the president really faces some challenges in Congress because he's not only fighting up against opposition in his own party from Bernie Sanders, but Rand Paul and others in the Republican Party are almost forming a new coalition that's really going to push back, I think, against the president's recommendations.
You know, that's an interesting question. How much trouble do you expect? Because a lot of this the president can't do on his own. And one of the things, Kim, that he talked about in the speech, Congress is going to have to approve if he's going to move the metadata, not the collection, but the storage from the NSA to either the phone companies, which, as Britt says, don't want it, or to a private, new created third party. And you wonder about that. And you also wonder about potential security leaks there and privacy concerns. Is Congress going to go along with them on all this?
I mean, this is where the drama now shifts to, because you did have, for instance, John Boehner come out after that speech, a very short statement saying, you know, we in Congress are not going to do anything that is going to degrade the operational ability of the government to continue to protect the country, which does suggest he's going to get some pushback on some of the things that he has suggested. Of course, what's interesting is that you have had a real shift in the Republican Party in recent years, too. You have had Rand Paul, Justin Amash, many of these people who are allied, very big critics of the NSA. And when we had a vote last summer, for instance, in which those critics nearly almost managed to dismantle some of this. So it's going to be very interesting to see if John Boehner Republicans now step up for those who are actually worried about what the president's proposals will do to the ability to collect intelligence, if they are going to get a group that can actually push back against that.
Before I bring in one, I want to ask you, Kim, one other question. For all our talk about all the things the president maintains, is there anything in his speech that gives you heartburn, or is there anything in there that you look at, the reforms, and you say, gosh, that may have gone a little bit too far?
A lot, because, I mean, General Hayden is right. He maintains the structure. But what he has done is made this much harder to do. And I'll tell you, I mean, there was great thought put into the way this program actually works. And one of the reasons the president was vague about some of the things he thinks is because they don't know how to do the things that he's proposing. I'll give you an example. So, according to the president, we're not going to spy on our allies anymore. I mean, this sounds nice in theory, but what happens when Angela Merkel gets on the phone with Vladimir Putin? Do you just hang up? Because he's not necessarily our ally. So how do you make those distinctions? And he was very vague about some of these. And this issue of where you house this data. One of the reasons that we've had it all in one spot is because it's what allows you to make connections. If each of the phone companies keep it themselves, you can't make those connections anymore.
We asked you for questions, and we got one on Facebook from a fellow, appropriately enough, named Stephen Covert. And he said, why hasn't the Congress done anything before this? They knew about the improprieties long ago. Why haven't they done anything? Juan, how do you answer, Stephen?
Stephen, I think they're scared, if not cowardly. I mean, I think that they're worried that they will be called soft on terrorism, that they will be said to be unpatriotic if they do anything that goes towards the civil liberties end of the scale. So, you know, I've seen less oversight on Capitol Hill as a result, and what you see in general, even as we approach a reauthorization of the Patriot Act, is a sense that, yeah, we can take some steps, but we don't want to go so far as to open ourselves to President Obama saying, hey, a bomb went off, and it was because of the Congress that I couldn't do what I needed to do to protect Americans. And I think that's a real risk for Congress. Now, I think they're going to have to take some steps, and I think your guest, Pat Leahy, Jim Sensenbrenner in the House, who did the Patriot Act before, I think they're going to say, in collection of this data, we have to impose some limits as to government, because you want to make sure that people in power don't abuse it proactively. So far, the fact is, again, to get back to Stephen's question, nobody's abusing. There's no evidence that somebody's abusing.
And that's the correct answer to the question. The correct answer to the question, in my view, is what improprieties? Mm-hmm. This program really threatens no one unless it's abused. And to date, not a single victim has been identified, not a single abuse of the metadata has been identified that harmed anyone in any way. So that's, I think, the real reason why Congress hadn't done anything is that the program has so far worked as intended, although it hasn't done as much as they might have thought it could, but there's no one harmed.
But, Britt, you know, you get the emails, and you're going to get them today.
Oh, I'm sure going to get them today.
I get the emails, and there are a lot of very loyal, patriotic Americans who are outraged by this, are outraged by what they've learned of Edward Snowden. And as far as they're concerned, well, maybe you can't point to the abuse, but the idea that the government can just vacuum up all of this information about law-abiding citizens, they're very offended by it.
They're offended by the concept of it, and that's understandable. What many of them don't understand is these telephone calls are not being listened in on. It is simply a record of the kind that your phone company gets every time you place a call, of the number you called, the duration of the call, the time of the call. That's it. And when you have that, and when you think of the number of phone calls made and the volume of this metadata, this is the ultimate haystack. And you know, you have to, special procedures have to be undergone to search this vast amount of information. My basic thesis, I guess, is if everyone is supposedly under surveillance, everyone with every call, then no one is.
But you know what? I think a lot of people, Britt, the Tea Party folks and the Libertarians, so that's Rand Paul to Bernie Sanders.
And the ACLU.
Yeah, their fear is, unlike you and me, I think you and I agree on this because we both assume that they're listening to whatever is going on, and they should be in terms of protection.
They're listening at anything.
I think they do. I think they collect everything. I think they look at the emails. I think they have the capacity to.
Well, that's a different matter.
Okay, no.
That anxiety is out there, and I think a key group
that's
to
what I'm
watch
trying
is
to
the
get at.
2014 Senate Democrats. Because you look at Mark Begich from Alaska, he has to face a tough race this year. He came out against the president's speech. And so you're seeing some Democrats, they get these emails, they feel the unease among their constituents. I think that's the group to watch.
Well, all right, but Bob, let me ask you about that, because on the one hand, you've got two competing things here. They're getting deluged with emails by people saying, you got to put an end to this, or you got to put a lot more restrictions on it. But on the other hand, as Juan and Kim suggest, boy, if there's, God forbid, there's another attack, they don't want to be held, well, you were the guys who created the security gap.
And look what happened last year when a vote on the NSA came to the House floor. John Boehner, who rarely votes as Speaker, he voted in support of the NSA and the national security establishment. So I think especially in the Republican Party, Boehner and others are grappling, how hawkish can you be within your own conference and on the campaign trail? Because there is a lot of questions out there.
All right, we have to take a break here, but we'll have you back later to discuss a tough new report on the Benghazi terror attack. Up next, just how secure is the Obamacare website? One expert warns Congress hackers are a few clicks away from getting your information. He joins us next. And be sure to tell us what you think. Go to Facebook and share your favorite moments from today's show with other FNS fans.